My next guest shares her inspirational story of transitioning from an English teacher to a full-time freelance writer in the finance industry. In this episode, she talks about how much she charges, how she was able to move from lower paying clients to higher paying clients, and how she markets her services. In fact, she talks about how she was pretty much able to put herself into a position where the leads come on autopilot. It's a good place to be. This is a fun one. Please welcome Emily Guy Birken. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me. And just a heads up to the audience, Emily is from Milwaukee. We've got somebody else from the Milwaukee area, and this is great.
Milwaukee represent.
did not plan that. There's just a network of people out there, a company that connected us that doesn't even have a location in Wisconsin. And here we are. Wisconsin. Okay.
It's pretty awesome.
So let's get right into it. And why don't you tell us about your background?
So I am a personal finance writer and the author of 5 books on personal finance. I did not plan to do this. This was an accidental career. I'm actually an English teacher by training. I taught high school English for 4 years. And then I kind of tripped and fell backwards into writing about personal finance. So I taught from 2006 to 2010. My oldest child was born in tail end of August 2010, and we happened to move from one state to another that summer. So because we're real good at timing, I was not going to be able to find a teaching job because I'd have to immediately leave to go on maternity leave. So the original plan was I was going to take a year off to stay home with the baby. But then also because we're real good at timing, we couldn't sell our house in Ohio where we'd been moving from. So we went from 2 incomes to 1, 2 people to 3, and 1 mortgage to 2. So it was a little stressful. So because I wasn't going to be able to teach, I thought I'll see if I can find some freelance writing that I can do. And one of the first gigs that I landed was for a personal finance website. My dad was a financial planner, so I did grow up in the industry, and I've always been a bit of a money nerd. And I was like, oh, I can do this. And it's kind of took off. So it was very much not the intention of any aspect of my career plan, but it worked out really, really well, especially since we had moved from Columbus, Ohio, which is not where either my husband or I are from. We met there, but we're both from the East Coast, to Lafayette, Indiana, where we didn't know anyone and had no family or friends when we got there. And so being able to transition into a freelancing job meant that I could be the primary parent for our child. And I didn't have to worry about the sort of like, oh, how do we take time off because the baby's sick? Or, those sorts of questions like, oh, we got to get the kid to the well child visits. That is very difficult when you don't have a network. So, the intention was not for me to continue the baby turned 13 earlier this year.
Okay.
So the intention was not for me to continue doing this for the next decade plus, but it turned out that it was a much better fit for both my skills and temperaments and needs of the family. And I was able to relatively quickly recreate the amount of money that I was making as a teacher. And so it worked out really, really well for the whole family. So I never anticipated that I would be doing this, but I'm so glad that I did. And I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Thank you for the context there, backstory. You said you were able to match and exceed salary. How long did that take?
So let's see. So we had our first child in 2010, and then we had our second in 2013. And so it was definitely after our second baby. Gotcha. Because I ended up taking some time off with our second, and in between all of that, like in that middle time in between the 2 boys, the plan still was that I was going to do this and then maybe go back to teaching. And it wasn't until like we were juggling 2 kids and I was like, I can't be a teacher and have 2 kids. There's just no way, that I decided to really like double down and focus on making sure that I was maximizing my income instead of early on, I made a lot of very common freelancer mistakes, like jumping at any opportunity, even if it was low pay, because like, well, this could dry up at any time. So I got to take what I can, and accepting lower pay than I was worth, those sorts of things. I had a, few clients, none in the personal finance realm, honestly, but I had a few clients who ghosted me and I didn't get paid, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So once I kind of learned how to navigate those sorts of like difficulties, and once I really decided to focus on like, I want to find higher paying clients and I'm worth it. Where can I find those clients? How can I really expand? Is when things really started happening for me. It also helped. It took us about a year. The other reason there wasn't so much pressure was it took us about a year to sell our house in Columbus, Ohio. But once we sold that house, then my income from freelancing became just kind of like icing on the cake and was no longer, like,
Sure.
how are we going to do this? And so it was once I was clear on the fact that I wasn't going back to the classroom that I was like, okay, I need to be able to make, my first goal was 50,000 in a year.
Yep.
And, once I got there, I started giving myself a higher and higher income goal for the year and my current goal, I still have not quite gotten there, is I want to out earn my husband.
All right.
So that's my ultimate goal. I've gotten close, but he's very well paid. So
Yes. He's an engineer and he's been in that space for some time. We're talking offline about the companies or where he works. So yeah, Caterpillar, correct?
He has worked at Caterpillar and he's worked at Honda. Prefer not to say where he works right now, but
Sure.
he's a mechanical engineer. He is one of the few people in the country who can do what he is able to do. So the upside and downside of that: the upside is he's always in demand and well paid. Downside is there's only a few places in the country that needs him. So if he gets a new job, we move. Right. Although I told him with this most recent move, the one that brought us to Milwaukee, I told him, well, if you get another job, Godspeed. I'm staying here. I'm not moving again.
Sure. Fell in love with the city. I get it.
Yes.
Long story short, we have a freelance writer here that's going to exceed the salary of an engineer. Absolutely. You're an entrepreneur. There's no limitations. We may talk about a strategy and how to get you there a little bit, but this is good. I like breaking down people's business models, and then we'll get into some fun topics here, some of the topics you teach the people you talk to. But with your business model, is it strictly 100% service-based? You do freelance writing, or do you have some other, I'm thinking of like a leveraged income product, like a course or something you sell on a website?
So I don't have a course or anything like that. What I do have is, as I mentioned, I'm the author of 5 books about personal finance.
Right.
And so I do get royalties twice a year. I want to make it clear, like, if you want to become rich, don't write a book. That's not
right.
Of the 5 books, only one of them is generating royalties for me.
Yeah.
And that's just because the way that the book sales work, all of that. My first book, it's called The 5 Years Before You Retire. It became an Amazon bestseller very quickly. Never quite got to like Wall Street Journal or USA Today or New York Times bestseller lists, but it has had legs that this entire time. It came out originally 2014. I put out an update in 2021, and both have. I earned out my advance with the very first 6 months. It was right. On sale, which was fantastic. It kind of set the bar high for me, thinking for the next 4 that came after. But that is something that I have been so grateful for throughout, my career, that I know at the end of March and the end of September every year, I'm going to get a royalty statement. Sometimes it's going to be awesome. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit, but no matter what, there's a little bit of money coming in. And part of the reason why I do keep writing books is I believe that this will happen again. And some of my books, they have not yet out-earned their advance, but I believe that they will. And so it's just a matter of time before those start generating royalties as well.
What does that mean, out-earn the advance? Can you explain that?
Sure. So when you are in the publishing industry, Authors are paid in advance for the book that they write. Now, you hear about the huge advances, like a $500,000 advance or $100,000 advance. Most books are going to be much, much smaller. And so my first book, I was an unknown author. The publisher actually reached out to me. They came up with the idea for the 5 years before you retire in-house, and then went looking for a writer. And my editor was familiar with my work online, thought I'd be a good fit. So that advance was only $5,000, which is very, very small. And you get half of it before you start writing, and you get the other half when you're done. And the intention is this is what will allow you to take the time to write the book. Now, that's not how it works for fiction. If there's anyone who's interested in how fiction writing works, that's a very different process, because you have to write the whole thing and then go find someone who wants to publish it and get the advance. So what the advance is, it's an advance on royalties. In most cases, authors are going to earn something like 10 to 15% if they go through the traditional publishing route. So 10 to 15% of every book sold, the author earns. So the advance is the first, basically $50,000 worth of books of the 5 years before you retire sold. 5,000 of that was my advance. And so because I sold more than $50,000 worth of this book in the first 6 months, I got a very small royalty check, but the first 6 months royalty check, I got a little bit, and it was just lovely. It was lovely to get that.
Yeah.
So, but that's where if you see someone, if they talk about like a $500,000 or $100,000 advance, what that means is the publisher is betting on the book being some kind of huge bestseller, so that what's best for the publisher is if they don't have to pay any royalties because it has exactly earned the advance. Yeah. So they sell exactly $1.25 million worth of books. So the $125,000 advance is paid out, and then they're good. And it's capturing lightning in a bottle. The publishing industry is bizarre, and you said or offline that you really like movies. It's similar to that, where a lot of times publishers are trying to find the book that's the next Girl in the Train, or the next Latte
Hunger
Factor.
Games, or
right. Whatever. And so you get a lot of things that are very much derivative of something that was huge. And then, so it can be tough for someone who has a brand new idea to get it to come out, because they're like, well, how do we know it'll sell? Because we can't compare it to something that has sold well. So those are the sorts of things that go into book publishing, and is one of the reasons why, if you want to go into writing, you see like Stephen King, you see, J.K. Rowling and Suzanne Collins and, E.L. James, like making millions upon millions of dollars. And those are the outliers. Yeah. On the other end, you have people barely scraping by. And then in the big middle is mostly you get working writers. Right. So, and most working writers are going to either be doing something other than writing in addition to the book writing to be able to like afford to write their books. Or you get people like me who do a lot of freelance writing, and that's their bread and butter. And then they also take some time to write books, and that also generates some income for them.
Credibility boost. We'll get into that in a second. If anybody out there is a fan of Family Guy, Stewie is always making fun of Brian. Brian's a dog because Brian's a writer, yet he's broke. He's made no money as a writer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. That's the case for most writers. Now with your situation, you use the book as credibility, and that probably helps you get those higher quality, because you mentioned that. I want to talk about that a little bit. How do you get those higher quality clients? Because in other words, your revenue stream is primarily freelance writing then, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. How did you make that transition from, I hate to say it, the tire kickers, the bottom feeders, the people that they want everything, but they want to pay nothing? Like, how did you graduate from that to like higher quality clients?
Yeah, that was a bit tough. Now, one of the things that I did early on that I'm very glad of, and it's long enough ago that the floor sounds really low, but I set a floor for myself, the least amount of money I would be willing to accept. And in 2010, that was $25 for like a 500 word article, which is still like, even with inflation, way too low. But
Mhm.
I said it because I'd see stuff like where people would be offering $10 or $5 for that amount of work. And so I recognized like I have a floor and I will not go below that floor. And so that was one thing that was really helpful. And part of my growth was recognizing when I needed to raise that floor. So that was part of it. Another part of it was understanding what I bring to the writing that no one else can bring. So I have a master's degree in English education because I was an English teacher, and I've my undergraduate degree is in English literature with an emphasis in creative writing. So I was coming at writing about money from a more literary standpoint. And that gave me a little bit of imposter syndrome early on because I'd have people be like, well, like, what do you know about money? I'm like, well, I know how to research and I know how to write. And I did grow up in the industry. So like I have like fewer limiting beliefs about being able to understand this stuff than the average bear. Um, but it did mean that, if I was looking at an article that was for a rival publication that was written by someone who has an MBA or is some sort of money expert or an economics degree, and it was dry as sawdust, I was like, I can write something that people will want to read, even if they're not deep in the money world. And so recognizing that that was an important thing that I brought to the writing process was really helpful in letting me kind of like winnow out like the tire kickers, the ones who like, we just need content as quick as possible. I'm like, well, that's not what I provide. So we're not a
It's
good
not a fit.
fit. And so the people who actually did want to, like, we want to reach out to people who aren't reading about personal finance. We want to reach the people who need the help. And we need to make sure that there's personality and warmth and no shaming. I'm like, oh, that's me. I can do that. But I'm going to cost you. And okay, well, that's worthwhile.
That's great. I like to hear stories of people like you don't want to go for everything. You set this is the bar, not going any lower, whether it's a project fee or hourly fee or whatever it is, you set the bar and you don't go any lower. Can you share with us kind of a range? What do you charge to write? Did you charge like by project or by hour or by article? How do you monetize this?
So generally in the online freelancing sphere, you get paid by article.
Okay.
So as I said early on, I was getting like $25 per article. At this point, 13 years into my career, I the range is at the low end $500 for an article, and at the high end $1,500 to $2,000 for an article.
Great.
Um, Now, the articles that I'm writing now are going to be a lot more involved than the ones I was cranking out for $25 an hour post back then. But ultimately, it doesn't take me that much longer. Like the most recent article that I wrote that was I think about $1,500. I had to do 2 interviews, and not counting the interviews, I think I spent about 2.5, maybe 3 hours
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I aim for, is like, I'm hoping to get about, like, if I were to do this hourly, even though I couldn't do 40 hours a week of writing, like it's just my brain would get tired.
You'd be
Um,
exhausted.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but I'm aiming for an hourly rate of around no less than like $400
That's
for the
great.
writing.
That's great.
Now, I don't actually, as I said, I'm not doing 2,000 hours of work in a year
Mhm.
at that rate, but that's what I'm aiming for.
No, that's great. Let's talk about the marketing aspect. Getting these customers, are they coming to you now because you have the books out, or is there still like an outreach process or networking schedule you have to adhere to making sure you're connecting with people, opening doors, letting
Mhm.
them know like, hey, I can write articles for you. How do you bring in new clients?
So I am very lucky at this point that I have people reach out to me,
Great.
which is fantastic. The way that I got to this point, now part of it is because of that book, or the books that I have. So people know me because of I'm the author of those books, and they'll reach out to me. But even before that, my publisher reached out to me because they knew my work. And that is all comes back to I go to a conference annually called FinCon. It's for financial media creators. And I have been going since 2011. I went to the inaugural FinCon. It was the very first one. And that has been such a game changer. It was at that FinCon that I got a client who I was writing a daily column for, and that was the specific work that my publisher knew me from and thought that I would make a good fit for 5 years before you retire. So that was really fantastic. Just going to this conference on an annual basis, meeting people, letting them know that I'm open for it, and letting them know what I'm an expert in. Like if someone's looking for, because I've written a book about Social Security. So if someone's looking for a Social Security expert, they know that they can reach out to me. So that's part of it. Another thing that I think is really important is getting into mastermind groups, and like socializing with other people in your industry. So I am a part of a couple of different writers mastermind groups, and have been from the very beginning. Early on, I was in a local mastermind group that was in person when I was still in Lafayette, Indiana. Now all of my masterminds are remote. And one of the things that's great is that we can talk about stuff like, hey, this new client is offering this amount, but for this much work. Does that seem unreasonable, or does that seem about right? Or have you had any experience with this editor? And just I want to make a good first impression for my first article. But then we also do, hey, I had someone reach out. They need a writer and I'm full up. Can anyone take this? Can I recommend anyone? And so that has been also really, really helpful in making sure that opportunities are kind of shared in the industry. And it's great knowing that I can recommend someone whose work I believe in if it's a project I can't take, and knowing that they will recommend me.
Yep. I've had multiple guests on the podcast recommend mastermind groups or networking groups of some sort. In many cases these days it's online, fortunately, because COVID put us into fast forward with like, hey, use Zoom and Teams and Google Meetup or whatever, as much as you can. So yeah, that's a good call. Now, just brainstorming here, I've seen people in your position that are an author, and then they provide a service, and an in-between product that might create some passive income would be a course that, I don't know if you probably already thought of this, but that teaches other writers how to get more clients, because the biggest challenge you run into really any business is marketing and sales. How do I get better at marketing and sales? So just food for thought. If you wanted to level up your income, you already have the books. You might have a way to get a lead funnel or a lead magnet with like additional material for free, get them on an email list, and then you can sell courses or a course thereafter.
I've actually looked into that multiple times. And I had a realization recently. I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about the bank robbery that led to the term Stockholm Syndrome. And so they were talking about all the work that the heisters, the robbers did prior to, and then like everything going wrong and dealing with the hostage situation and all of that. And in my head, I was like, is that really easier than a 9-to-5? The amount of work that you have to go into, like to live a life of crime and to rob a bank. And it kind of clarified something for me, which is that anytime I've looked into doing that kind of marketing that leads to a funnel, that leads to something that would be more passive income for me, I kind of shy away from it, because in my head, I'm like, that sounds like work.
I don't want to rob a bank.
Yeah.
I'll just go do this.
I would rather work at the bank than rob it. And so recognizing, and so some of that is at some point, I suspect I'm going to get to a point where I am going to need to level up. And when I get there,
Sure.
it'll be partially because I have gotten to the revenue point where I can hire someone who can do the work that I don't want to do, which I've already done. Like I have a virtual assistant who helps me with like my email newsletter. When I write blog posts for my website, I'm happy as a clam to write them, but actually getting them posted with the images and formatting and links is just like, oh, it sounds like work. So, um, but that's something that I've slowly been kind of like embracing the idea of like, if I am like hesitant about doing something, I do need to push enough to know if it's not just like imposter syndrome hesitancy, or if it's my brain going, no, I don't want to do that. I would rather, get another 2,000 word or $2,000 article, and kind of honoring what it is my brain wants to do, while also not allowing myself to stay too close to my comfort zone.
Right. If you want to, and if we're gonna have fun here, you want to surpass your husband's salary, this is your ticket. I'll put it that way. A lot of,
yes, I do understand that.
yeah, the passive income. Now, a correct approach, and I've been researching how to do courses the last 10 years plus. Finally executed on a year ago, and it's paying off. Usually, the best way to go is don't engineer it. Really lean on your audience. Ask them, what are the biggest pain points you have, and then address those and start small. You can start small, keep adding to the course. And of course, you can level up your prices in the course as more content is added, but just lean on them, let them do the hard work. And they're not really doing hard work. It's just like, usually as an entrepreneur, you're thinking, well, I got to come up with that big idea. It's like, no, you do not.
Yeah.
Ask your customers the biggest pain point. You can even start with like a live course. I'm actually doing that coming up soon with the second course. I'll start live and then chop it up into bits and put it onto, I use Teachable. There's plenty of platforms out there. Teachable just seems to be the right price for all the features I wanted. But anyway, it is a great, like a bolt on to a service or another product you have. I don't always love when I hear somebody, their only business model are courses, because it reminds me of like 2013 when you have the guy teaching people how to create courses. Like I created a course on how to, like, I think of like, pyramid schemes, or like the snake eating its own tail. Like we're just going to go round and round on this. It's like, no, it should complement something you're already doing. And to me, it seems like a shoe-in. And you've got a VA. You could find, if you wanted to do video, you go to Upwork, find somebody who's really talented, can chop up some videos for you for a pretty low price. It's like you find the right people, you can put it together in no time.
Yeah. And that's it is something I've kind of like dipped my toe in a few times, and and because I am at a point where I feel very confident in my my freelancing career and in the royalties that I'm earning, I am actually going in directions that I feel exciting to me. Like my sister and I just recently launched a podcast where we take deep dives into pop culture, because we both really love overthinking stuff, and we were both English majors. So it's called Deep Thoughts About Stupid. I don't know if I can curse.
Please do.
Deep thoughts about stupid shit. And so we look at stuff like Twilight, Ghostbusters, The Princess Bride, Neverending Story.
Yes.
So, and in each episode, we talk about some major aspect of pop culture, and really like dive into like what are the themes and messages that we took in with this pop culture that we didn't realize we were listening to, and had kind of created furniture in our brain. So that's the sort of thing where like I decided earlier this year, like we were going to, go all in on this rather than something that would maybe complement what I do with the personal finance and the writing more, just because it sounded so fun and brought so much joy to both of us. And so, it's one of those like, okay, we're going to start small with that and see if we can grow that to the point where that is bringing income in a consistent way.
I love it. Now I did hear, I got to throw a flag on the play here. I heard Ghostbusters mentioned in the list, and there's nothing stupid about that movie. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's one of the things that we say over and over again is like, we call it that because, so many people will say, oh, it's just pop culture. Like, don't take it so seriously. And
Sure.
we're saying like, no. Just because it's popular and doesn't mean that it's not worthy of our love, doesn't mean it's not worthy of our overthinking and analysis.
I love it. I'll check it out. That you've caught my attention,
Well,
I can
thank
say.
you.
This podcast episode is sponsored by Ticker. Ticker is a platform that helps you manage your own investments with confidence. Check this out. Let's search for Apple. You can see Apple is on sale. That's looking good. Score is 61 out of 100 and margin of safety is 75%. Higher the score, the safer the investment, and the higher the margin of safety, the higher potential returns you can make. In this case, you can see the share price is 175 as of the recording of this video, and the upside potential, the fair value, is 398. All right, let's look at a different stock. We'll go to GameStop. In this case, GameStop is overpriced. Scores 39 out of 100. That's not looking too good. And the margin of safety is 0%. Here's some other features within. You can create your own custom dashboard. I like to set up and take a look at the top gainers and losers in the last 24 hours. I also like to take a look at the top search stocks, but you can really customize the dashboard to whatever you want. We have stocks, ETFs, crypto. This is a big one. We have a watch list tool that allows you to add stocks to the watch list. And if anything changes, such as that score or margin of safety, you automatically get notified. I call it the set it and forget it feature. And then we have portfolio trackers and alerts. So if you're looking for strong stocks, want to avoid bad stocks, and learn how to invest, I invite you to join Ticker for free. All right, before we jump to the rapid fire round, I want to ask you one fun question I found in your marketing material, which was actually money can buy you happiness. Here's how. Can you explain that?
So we tend to have like these really strong views of money that are very shame based, where like the best things in life are free, and money can't buy happiness. But at the same time, we're bombarded by these advertisements where like you'd be happy if you had a Tesla, a boat, Coca-Cola, whatever it is. And so recognizing that actually money does help you feel happier if you spend it in the right way. And so there is some really fascinating research into what our brains do when it comes to like anticipating pleasurable experiences and how we enjoy them at the time and how we look back on them. And one of the things that they have found is that our level of happiness is better predicted by our day-to-day levels of contentment and annoyance than they are by anything really big. So like everyone feels great on their wedding day, or I hope so anyway. Everyone feels great on a vacation in Greece, but that is like a momentary thing. And it's, if you put all of your happiness eggs in that basket, you forget about the annoyance and the stress of planning the wedding or planning the Greek vacation. You forget about like all of the day-to-day issues that can make it difficult to get to that very happy day. And then because of something called hedonic adaptation, once you get to that wonderful day, it gets to be normal. So like, that's not so much the case with a single day, like a wedding day, but your 2-week vacation in the Greek Isles, by day 3, you're used to it. So what that means is the way to derive the most happiness out of your money, out of your spending, is to spend on regular small indulgences that you will always enjoy. So for instance, going to a happy hour with your best friend every week is going to be a lot more satisfying and give you a lot more happiness than if you were to save up that money and go for a week-long spa vacation with your best friend. You're going to have a lot more joy from that weekly repetition. Similarly, I am someone who I love like stationery. I love pens and markers and things like that. And regularly spending a little bit of money on something that that I enjoy is going to feel better than buying a new car. And it's because I get a day-to-day satisfaction out of it, rather than, whereas the new car, before the new car smell has dissipated, has become old hat, and it's just my wheels and how I get around. So those are the sorts of things that we don't really think about, because we think about money as being like a big splashy thing. That's what makes you happy. And it will for a very short period of time. But if you want ongoing happiness, spend a little bit of money on regular purchases. Usually experiences are going to be the best ones that consistently make you happy and are something you look forward to.
I love that. This type of behavior on money is very similar. You probably know the guy, Dan Ariely.
Oh, I love him. Yes.
Yes. The psychology of money and these simple things you can do in your life that just bring so much more joy. He doesn't teach exactly what you just talked through right now, but it's in the same vein. I'm curious, is there a particular book in your list of 5 that really speaks to this the most?
Yes. My book, End Financial Stress Now, is about how it's inevitable that we will all have money stress, but a lot of the money stress that we have is completely unnecessary. It's something that we put on ourselves. And so the book is entirely about letting go of limiting beliefs about money, and recognizing what are actual money problems and what are problems that we are assigning ourselves, just because of the way that we have been taught to look at money, the way that we have grown to look at money. And so that book, I absolutely loved writing it. It was and I had it in mind for about 8 years before I wrote it.
Awesome.
And is very much about creating a money situation for yourself that is going to reduce your level of stress and letting go of stressful assumptions that you might have about money.
Right on. I'm adding it to my Amazon shopping cart as we speak.
Oh, well, thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's jump into the rapid fire round. This is the part of the episode where we get to find out who Emily really is. If you can, try to answer each question in 15 seconds or less. You ready?
Okay.
All right. What is your favorite podcast?
If Books Could Kill, with Michael Hobbs.
Okay. Nice. All right. What is a recent book you read and would recommend?
The Lamplighters by Emma Codex, I believe was her last name. It's a just phenomenal story about 3 lighthouse operators in like the 70s who disappear. It's based on a true story. Like these 3 men just disappeared. They have no idea what happened to them. And it tells the story in 2 parts, the days before they disappeared, and then 10 years later, they're 3 widows and how they have kind of moved on from that moment.
Is this a fictional story?
It's fiction, yes.
Okay, sounds
but it is
intriguing.
based on a true story, but it is fiction, and it stuck with me for just weeks and weeks and weeks. I'd find myself thinking about it again.
Lamplighters of
The Lamplighters, and the author's name is, I believe, Emma Codex.
Very interesting. I love mystery,
Yeah,
thriller, suspense.
That's my catnip, is when they're like, we have no idea what happened to them and the door was locked.
I want more.
I need that.
Well put. All right. Movie question. What is your favorite movie?
The Big Lebowski.
The Dude.
I taught my children to say, careful, man, there's a beverage here, when they were like 4.
Donnie, you're out of your element. That's so many good lines. All right. What is the worst advice you ever received?
I was told, with our first house, my husband purchased before he and I got married. He purchased it by himself. And it was in 2005 when they were throwing bags of money at anyone with a pulse. And so he only put a very small down payment, but the rest of the down payment was a home equity line of credit, basically. And so when we got married in 2008, I was uncomfortable having this. I mean, he was continuing to pay it, but I was uncomfortable having it. So I was like, "How about we live on your income, and we'll use mine to pay down that loan?" And someone who was in the financial realm told me, like, "Well, that's stupid. Why would you do that?" And
Unbelievable.
I think she was like, you want to keep that line of credit open in case you want to do renovations on the house. But it was like, it's a both end. Like we can do that. And what? So yeah, that was, because she was in the financial realm, I was like, are we doing something we shouldn't be doing? And like, I did a little bit of Googling to be like, does this make sense? And decided to just go with what we were doing because it felt good. And I'm very glad we did.
Right. Right on. All right. Well, flip that equation. What is the best advice you ever received?
It was actually when I was pregnant with my eldest. I was taking a water aerobics class at our local YMCA. I was the youngest person there by like 20 years, and I was remarking. I was about 7 months along. I was remarking to one of the lovely motherly women who exercised with me that I was nervous about being a mom, like how, like, and I've always been a straight A student, get the gold star. Like, am I going to do this right? I'm scared I'm going to screw it up. And she said to me, well, he's never had a mother either. So as long as you keep him safe, there are no rules. And that was so helpful for me in terms of parenting. Absolutely. But it has also kind of helped me in other areas of my life, like becoming a freelance writer, because I was just like, well, am I doing this right? And like, at the time, blogging wasn't brand new, but it was still pretty new. And I'm like, is this real writing if it's not in print? And, kind of thinking like, well, this hasn't happened for anyone else either. So why do you need what there are no rules that you have to follow, as long as you're doing right by your clients and doing right by your family financially, go for it and do what works.
Right. I love that. Great advice. All right. And last question, here's a time machine question. If you could give your younger self advice, what age would you visit and what would you say?
Oh, goodness. I think I would go back to my 20-year-old self. And I'd tell her to kind of, I'd probably give her similar advice. It's okay. You can make it up as you go along, and no one's paying attention like you think they are. I don't think she would have listened to me, but I think it would have been great if I could have internalized that back then.
Yes, I totally get it. Our younger selves knew everything.
Oh, yes.
So they thought.
Yes.
So they thought. Cool. All right, Emily, where can the audience reach you?
So you can find me at my website. It's emilyguyBirken.com. That's EmilyguyBirken.com. I am also still on Twitter. I don't know how much longer, but my handle is at Emily Guy Birken, but that's also my handle on Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, and also TikTok. So if you're hoping to find me, use that handle on whatever social media, you'll probably run across me.
Awesome. Well, we'll get all the links posted below, but thank you so much for your time. This was a blast.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. We'll see you.
See ya.